Okay, thanks everyone for tuning in. Now, if you've ever sold a house, you know how daunting it can be. It is a massive process with so many steps along the way and so much to do, from finding an agent to preparing your house to understanding your property's value to deciding whether to go to auction or not, to negotiating price and then dealing with contracts and dealing with settlements. There are many, many steps along the way. Now, fortunately, you don't need to do that on your own because there is some wonderful professional support that's out there. And with that in mind, today we are chatting to Nicole Payne from Bayside Real Estate Advocates. Nicole is a buyers and vendors advocate and can assist both buyers and vendors in their property journey. So, Nicole, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for coming along and having a chat
Thanks
today.
for having me.
Now, it's so we met nearly a couple of years ago, and since then referred a few clients to each other, and the clients that I've referred to you have just been absolutely thrilled with the service that you've offered and made the selling process so smooth and easy and comforting, comfortable for them. And before I really even got into broking, it wasn't even a service that I was that familiar with, to be totally honest. So I thought that there would be plenty of other people out there in the wider world that also aren't that familiar with the great service that you do as a vendor's advocate and what it all involves. So let's just dive in and, we'll go through a few questions around what you do. But first of all, I know one of the great things about you is you've got an extensive background in real estate and you come at the real estate um, process from a lot of different angles. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background and why you founded Bayside Real Estate Advocates?
Sure. So now, as I look back, I think of myself at the age of 22, entering into my first real estate role, buying my first house at 69,000, and it needed to come up with a $7,000 deposit. That was quite a big deal back then. And my
That'd
goodness,
be nice if it was still like that.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. And everyone's got a real estate story. I should have bought 10, but of course, it's what you can do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Well, we'll be saying that in another 30 years. We should have bought a couple more
that's
now.
right. So entered into real estate. I always liked sales. I was, really liked the interaction with clients. And actually, someone suggested, have you tried real estate? And after buying my first home, at a young age, which I really worked hard for, I just loved it. So I just was naturally gifted, I suppose, in terms of real estate. I had a great selling and listing career in the eastern suburbs for 15 years. I managed to be top 1% real estate agents of Victoria and won a lot of awards, and then became a big advocate for female real estate agents and doing a lot of training with new recruits in the industry. I then went to corporate, so I had a corporate role looking after business development for the state, so onboarding Ray White's as a brand, looking at helping directors, build their business, open new businesses, and a lot of the franchise work and training and things like that were included in that role, which I really liked. But I
Yep.
really missed being on the tools, so to speak, dealing with buyers and vendors, and so quickly found myself going back to what I love. And when I moved to Beaumaris, and I'd lived in Beaumaris for 3 months and then decided to open up a real estate office. So I opened up the Ray White office in the concourse. And we were doing exceptionally well. I think there was a lot of real estate agents back when I first started in the 90s, it was definitely a boys' club then. And
Mm.
I think some of the real estate agents here were certainly stuck in that era. And I say that respectfully, but it's for a woman to come along and to open up a business and an unknown, they didn't know what I was capable of. And obviously I was a bit of a force to be reckoned with when it came to the real estate side of it. And we just worked. And soon enough, we became quite significantly placed within the real estate in Bayside, which is just beautiful because I get to live and work in the same place, and it's great. Personally, I had brought my husband into the business. We're rocking and rolling with 12 staff, and it's all going on. Organically grown rent roll and all the bits and pieces you do.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have a family. And so, I don't know whether a lot of people aren't familiar with the process it takes to adopt a little person. We got the phone call, and then a week later we had a baby. So it
Wow.
was quick. And
Yeah.
I made it sound like it was very conducive, but it took a long
Is-
time. But all good things come to those that wait. And I remember it was, 3 days straight sitting in someone's lounge room at night, working, very long hours with a little person at home. And I just wanted to be more present. So we got an offer for the rent roll, sold that. My husband got a really great job. And it just sort of happened really naturally. And I thought, that's it, going to be a mum, going to have a break. And everyone said, you're going to get bored. You're going to get bored. I said, no, there's no way, I'm definitely just going to be a mum, after working like a maniac, like completely consumed in my career all my life. This was going to be my time, So 4 months in, I was bored. But, I laughed. And, I had clients ringing saying, oh, I wish you weren't, I wish you weren't retired. I wish you were on a sabbatical. Can you help us? We're in a pickle. Or, we've done this, we're in a jam. And I'd say, yeah, of course, I can definitely help you. And then I thought, geez, I better get paid for this. So that's how it happened. So a lot of people were still reaching out.
So it was a bit of a, it was a bit of a natural transition to come back just through people that you knew you had expertise in that area, and you started dipping your toes back into the water.
Yeah, that's right. So it was great. And, it's rewarding. It's always felt to me to be something that I've loved to do and, help my clients, which has made me had me a little bit of a point of difference, I suppose, in the work that I do, because I think real estate agents in general just get they get referred to as being pretty slick operators, but with potentially not the interest at heart for the client a lot of the time. Yeah, so it's always something I've been passionate about, helping clients through their real estate journey. And, it's really rewarding. It really feels special for me to be able to put all of my skills into to help somebody through a really difficult and what could be a really stressful time.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the largest transactions, whether you're buying or selling a property, that you're going to have in your entire life. So it's a very stressful time for everyone, and particularly a lot of clients are selling and then buying, or buying and selling, doing both within a matter of months. So I'm a big fan of outsourcing to professionals wherever possible, just to get that guidance. And essentially, if you're looking at properties in the Bayside area, you can be spending several millions of dollars, buying a property of that value. So to get that expert guidance is critical, so that you're not losing a significant amount of money on that deal, and you're buying a good quality asset, whether it's to live in or to invest in for the long term.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so one of the biggest decisions we make, and some people only do it a few times in a lifetime. Some people do it with, 40, 50 years in between. So, things change, technology, social media, the way we sort of find buyers, the whole transaction is so totally different.
Yeah. Awesome. So when you first started the business, was it specializing more in the vendors advocacy? Because I know you do both. You do vendors advocacy and buyers advocacy. I think you started more on the vendor side of things. Is that right? And then you sort of branching out a little bit?
Yeah. So at the moment, 75% of the work we do is vendor advocacy. And it's usually a product. The buyer work we do is usually a product of that. So, someone's got to buy something and then also sell. So we can do that end-to-end service. So, I think when you have a relationship with a client, you know exactly what their needs are, you know what they need to achieve, which step to give them advice on along the way, and what they're capable of, because a lot of people, some people are experienced, and some of the vendors we deal with, it's not that they've never done it before. Some are time poor. Some people are, wanting to invest. Others are, wanting to sell estates where they've got multiple siblings. Sometimes people have lost a parent and are left with that. It's really emotional. So it really just depends on the client and what they're capable of. And we sort of walk through that and guide them in that very straight line to the result as best we can. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those that aren't so familiar with a vendor's advocate, and we're probably using industry terminology, sometimes people might refer your service as a seller's advocate. So the vendor is someone that's selling the property.
Yes.
Can you explain, what a vendor's advocate actually does, and how that might differ to the role of a real estate agent?
Sure. So a real estate agent, as you know, you can get a few real estate agents in to have a look at your home. and generally make a decision on who you feel comfortable with to guide you through the sale. Now, a real estate agent is selling the property for the vendor, and it should just be 100% about the vendor. But they've got a buyer to deal with. They've got budgets to meet. They've got a large range of other factors involved. As a vendor advocate, we are just concerned about the vendor, not the buyer, not what leads the agent gets throughout the campaign, not their budgets, not about, the quickest sale. It's about the vendor and what their needs are and what's right for them. So
Yep.
I don't think, and being an agent on the other side of it too, it is very hard to be that in-between person. And I think a vendor, if you think an agent is going to guide you through completely without having those other factors involved, then, you're wrong. So I think there's a really good market for a vendor advocate with experience like myself that can actually lead them through every stage, so I think that's the difference. And a lot of agents are great about, that they'll sell the property, there's no doubt. But what happens before the property comes on the market? What happens after the property is sold? So that we are a one-stop shop, if you like, for all guidance
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
support.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you maybe talk through and expand on that process a little bit? So if you have a client that approaches you and says, look, I'm thinking of selling, later in the year, what are the sort of stages and steps that you would go through with a particular client to help them get the best deal and the smoothest sale possible?
Sure. So I would meet with the client, we'd have a look at the property together. We talk about their experiences. We talk about what's important to them. Obviously, the first step is to say, how can we achieve the best possible result? So with that, it can be the presentation of the property. So we have lots of great contacts and tradespeople. We coordinate quotes and from getting the house ready to getting it on the market, from styling. We've got speciality people that we deal with a lot, piano movers, whether or not it's art dealers. We can take their antiques and get prices on those. We can professional packers. Like, there's so much involved, from storage. We make it all happen. So when a vendor is sitting there thinking, wow, this is a little bit daunting, where do I start? How do I declutter? How do I donate to charity? How does this all come together? We do a lot of that and the coordinating of that. Now, it's taken me a long time to find some great people that I work with in that space, and it's a
Yep.
fine old machine. We just get the work done, get the quotes done for them, and then it comes to the agent side of it, where I interview 3 agents for the property. I'd send them my pro forma, they send the information back to me, and then I compare. So I come to the vendor and we talk about the price, and it's actually a price. I think the price question is really important to a vendor, because I'm always surprised when I ask 3 or 4 agents out to a property how that price can vary. So,
Mm.
it's very rare that they all come in at the same price. So it's assessing what is true value. So we often ask the
Right.
question of what's the true value on the property, from then commission and marketing. We can save them a lot of money on the marketing spend, about being specific to the advertising that we're utilizing during the campaign. But the most important part, I think, really is after we've selected an agent and I've negotiated a great commission rate, we've got a plan, we've worked out why the agent is great for that job, because some agents are great at townhouses, some are great at over 4 million, some are good at lots of plans. So it's finding the right agent with a great database so that we can initially start really well when we do hit the market. And someone with great experience as well. I think that's really important. We've got some great agents in this area. And so when I get the submissions and we make an agent selection, it's then about analysing the campaign. So my role is to project manage, so to manage from the beginning
Yep.
all the way through. And analysing the campaign is integral part in making sure that we take the mystery out of the result for the vendor. So often people get so nervous because they just don't know what's happening during their marketing campaign. Well, there's statistics that suggest how that property is going to fare. And that's what I look at: how many hits online, conversion rates, what offers they've had, second inspections, feedbacks, reports. There is a health of the campaign that can be managed really, really well. And that then creates the result at the end, which is going to be exceptional. And keeping the agent accountable during that. Have you done this? Have you done that? Where are we at with that? Did you go back and offer that? Have we done that second social media bump? Like where just everywhere along the way, I'm across it for them. So it's peace of
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, from what you've been saying there, it just demonstrates just the power of your previous experience. You've been on the other side of the fence as a real estate agent. From that experience exactly what a good real estate agent should be doing for the vendor and how to manage a campaign. Whereas, as you said earlier, sometimes people might only sell one property in their entire life. So it's a brand new experience for them with no idea on how to manage it. And no idea what the benchmarks are and what looks like a successful campaign or not. So you're in constant contact both with the vendor and the real estate agent to making sure that you're hitting certain milestones. And I guess sometimes if the property is not hitting certain milestones, then your advice might be to pivot with the strategy, at some stage along the way and provide that sort of support to the vendor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of agents just tend to wait to taking names and numbers at the door, hoping it turns around, and thinking that the auction day can be a form of conditioning for the vendor. Whereas that's pretty rough when you're a vendor and you're at the other end of that. So in the initial stages, there's a lot of key matrix that let me know how it's faring, and we make some changes around that. And it's not emotional based. It's just statistically driven. If we do this, it ends up being that. And, a lot of agents will wait to the very end, and it's not uncommon for vendors to say in the past when they've had experiences that, the agent said we had 15 groups through and 4 people liked it, and then it gets to the auction and they go, what happened? We had no one there. No one bid. Well, with me, there's no surprise. We know exactly how we're strategizing to the day. We know exactly how many buyers, where they're at, what we're going to do, whether it makes sense to pass it in before, whether it makes sense to go to this one particular buyer and negotiate one-on-one. So all of it is strategized around the best result for the vendor. And, agents, I think, have lots of other vendors to deal with. I don't touch any of their buyers. All I'm concerned about is doing the job that's right for my client. So by keeping them accountable, it's often making sure that nothing is left unturned and that the result is what we want.
Yeah. So you touch on auctions there and whether or not the bids are reaching the level that the client wants. So what's your general theory with auctions versus private sale? And are there some instances where one is a much more preferred strategy than others? Like, have you got any insider tips that you can share there?
I think there's definitely types of properties that are great auctions. And I always ask myself the question, if it was me, what would I do? And that's always set me really well for giving advice. So with an auction, a unique property is always a good one to auction because you never quite know where it's going to go, and it could go quite high. And so putting a price on it. Also too, a good auction is if a property is going to go really well, if you think it's going to have a lot of buyers and a lot of interest, it makes sense to auction it because that's going to be the best result for the client. If they absolutely do not want to do that, it needs to be listened to, of course, and it comes to about what they can manage, what they can handle. I can supply them with all the information as to why that would work, but then it comes to the end of the day about them feeling comfortable. And every step of the way we do, you're comfortable, we do the next step and the next step. And that's generally how you get through such a huge thing as, selling a property, really. So, but there's a lot to be said for auction. I think it really does put a timeline on it for the buyer, and that's a good thing. Private sale, my only fear on a private sale a lot of the time is that it's just too open-ended. And often you can get buyers that are interested that don't make any decisions, and they eventually don't have to act. And so to put a final date as an auction can really make a buyer make a decision, which is a good thing for a vendor a lot of the time. And we're in an auction-orientated area. Some areas just don't do that. So buyers are used to an auction. It's not that they don't know how to do it. So,
I've heard so many different stats, but I was speaking to a real estate agent a few years ago, and I just assumed that the vast majority of houses were always sold at auction, but he actually told me, no, it's actually the larger percentage are actually sold either privately or before auction. So it doesn't actually get to auction day. So you might have experienced similar or different stats, but I guess there's also, when you do have an auction date lined up in the future, there's always some buyers that want to put an offer in prior to auction. Do you have a strategy for dealing with those offers with your vendor prior to auction, and how to decide whether or not to accept that offer?
Yeah, so it's always good to get feedback during a campaign because you get an idea of value and what people are thinking, whether you're pitching it right, and all the rest of it when we're analysing the buyers during a campaign. So we love buyers that put in offers before auction, and I think really I've got a client at the moment. Actually, we've got some interest, and our auctions this Saturday. So I'm negotiating heavily with a particular buyer because there is no other buyers generally. And also another reason to look at early offers is if there is an offer there and then the other buyers are there and an auction date, there's no way to push them up to that point. That's
Yeah.
always a good way to look at offers prior to auction. You can still instigate the process. So you would then go back to everybody in the campaign saying there's been a great offer or a offer. If you're interested in this property, you need to do the same. So you could still create an auction within an auction, but you're not losing
Yep.
your top buyer. And especially if you've got no way of making sure you extract every dollar from them on the day, that's a good strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it empowers the vendor in a way if they're receiving some strong offers prior to auction, and they've got the choice: do they want to proceed through to auction and hopefully get a little bit more, or whether they've got the choice to take that good offer there and then. So what happens on the day? I mean, quite often when it comes to an auction, the property is passed in, haven't quite met the reserve, and then the highest bidder might walk in and then negotiate with the vendor and the real estate agent, and you'd be sitting in on that meeting, I imagine, and helping to negotiate that final price and hopefully get the sale done, potentially, if it's the right outcome for your client. Can you talk us through that process, like once an auction finishes? Because I imagine that's a pretty stressful negotiation that when you don't have any experience in that, if you're a vendor without the support of someone like yourself, that would be a very daunting few minutes, because it's going to make a big financial difference to you.
Absolutely. I think we look at it from the agent's point of view for a minute too. They've gone through a 4-week campaign. They want the result on the day. They want to get it sold. They want their option stats to look good for the weekend. Sometimes it can be the offer that they have is just enough to secure the property, and in their opinion, just enough is good enough. Whereas that's where it's a really important thing to have a vendor advocate like myself sitting there with you. Because if there is negotiations after a property has been passed in, I'm the best person to be there with you. So often, it's a dance that is played. But when I'm
Yep.
sitting there, and we don't have enough time to get into it quite now, but when I'm sitting there and I can know that the agent's going to do this and come in and say that to us, and I can turn around to my vendor and go, they're going to do this because of that. And then that happens and that's how it plays out. It's a lot better because I've got much more strength in the negotiation side of it to get the best result out of that particular buyer. And then also to weigh up their options as to whether we've got other interest if we go beyond this point. And of course, I sat there and we've strategized around what could happen on the day. So it's generally not a surprise that this is occurring. And, I'm very strong with my agents. And I think coming from a strong position gives you the ability to get the better result for the client. And they see that every time when I'm sitting with them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I do it on
Well,
a
it really,
daily basis. So.
yeah. I imagine it really balances out that power equation, because there'd be a lot of vendors that have, as we said before, they've never done that before, and they're dealing with a real estate agent that has sold 1,000 properties, and wants that sale done, and maybe pushing for a particular result.
Definitely.
And rather than bowing to pressure, if you got someone on their side like yourself to help with that negotiation, that has that experience and knows when and where to push back, and maybe where not to push back, where to accept,
Yes.
that's a very empowering position to be in. So do you normally deal with owner occupier clients, or do you deal with property investors as well that are looking to sell? And I guess, are there different strategies that you look at with investors versus people selling their own home?
Yeah, so a lot of investors, if they're selling their property, then they probably have tenants in there. If they don't, then it's always, interesting, because the first instance I'd go and meet the tenant, I'd have a discussion with them. It's really important to make sure that the tenants are on board with the selling process as well. Otherwise, it could be very
Yeah.
difficult for the client
Mhm.
in so many ways. So I would go out, introduce myself to the tenant, make sure it's nice and smooth and a good first introduction. Then come back and let the vendor know whether it's worthwhile keeping the tenant in, whether we're going to have success that way, or it's worthwhile waiting till the tenancy is ended and then we get it styled and other things and prepared. Plus also to getting the quotes sorted to get things ready. I liaise with the agent who's obviously managing the property, and then we work out a strategy around that. So if you're selling an investment property, sometimes it can be good to advertise that it's earning a certain amount of rent. And sometimes the tenants
Yep.
are the house is well presented and they're very flexible, and those are perfect. And that's what we would like most of the time. But there are differences along the way, because it's who we pitch it to. And I think it's being specific about the market. When you've got a product, you've got to know who your buyers are going to be. So if that's going to be just investor because we've got, a 12-month tenancy attached to it, or if we still think it's going to be a first home buyer's market, how do we make it more appealing to that particular buyer? So there's a few things more involved, I think, in that. And the analytics are really important along that, and we've talked about that before. That's specifics around having an investment property. So it depends if you're selling it to investors. You need to know a lot more about the area, the infrastructure. The
Yep.
agent's voice out
Yep.
there needs to be different to the marketplace because those are the buyers he's dealing with. So those are the things we talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess both, owner occupiers and investors obviously want the best sale price possible for them to maximize their returns, but there's many different strategies depending on the nature of the property as to how to get that great outcome from the client.
That's
So
right.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's a great lesson. So I'm conscious of your time. Don't want to spend too much more of your day having a chat, but could chat for hours. There's so many good things we can talk about. But I know you've helped a couple of my clients out sensationally, but I know there's many more clients that you've dealt with. Have you got any memorable experiences with any particular clients that you could maybe share the scenario where you've helped them out, quite enormously, whether if they have gone down their own route of trying to negotiate themselves or sell the property themselves, they wouldn't have got anywhere near as great an outcome?
Yeah, so I think the clients that I deal with, I'm pretty lucky. I say that I've got great clients, and I really do. I really do. I'm
Yeah.
really lucky. There's been one particular occasion. There was an older lady. She found herself on her own after a long time, and she hadn't done it and sold a property for many years. Her husband handled the financials. She had it on the market with an agent that she chose for many months. And during that time, there was very few buyers that came through the property. So obviously that says to me that the marketing wasn't working and that we needed to really look at the property and reassess where we're at with it. So she was told a lot of, I guess, conflicting information about the presentation of the property as well. So when I came along, we needed to do a few things to the home, and those things were very simple. So it didn't cost a lot of money, but obviously got it ready, and we relisted with another agent. And the agent that I interviewed a few agents for the job, but obviously chose the right agent there. She was very good. And also too, we had competition. On the day, she was able to achieve far greater than what she ever hoped for. And she'd been sitting on the market for 4 months prior with no activity. So I guess it's those things, but also to the support along the way. She might have needed, she needed a little bit more of a friend opposed to an agent, just a ruthless agent. I think so.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sort of sensitivity comes into it a little bit too with some clients. So, and that was just 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago. So that's the answer.
Oh, right. That's nice. And then it'd be so rewarding for you to be able to help people in that position. And I guess the value that people get out of your services, it's not just purely potentially a financial reward in that you're selling the property for potentially a higher value than what they otherwise would have done it on their own, but there's that emotional support and just having that confidence and comfort and being able to sleep at night over the 3-month campaign from when you decide to sell to list and all the rest of it, that you can't put a price on that, and that's invaluable. So must be a very rewarding experience dealing with most of your clients.
It is. Yeah, it's great. I mean, people sell for so many different reasons. There's marriage breakups, there's downsizing, there's upsizing where their family is just so busy and they just don't have the time. We do
Yep.
we do a number of different things to make their life easier, and they're always very grateful of that. And I think the true testament to that is that most of our business is repeat business and referral, and we work very hard to make sure that we go above and beyond for our clients as well. So
Yeah, awesome. Oh, well, thanks very much for your time today, Nicole. It's been wonderful chatting again. And everything that you've talked about just demonstrates the high level of value that you add to your clients and your passion for the industry, your passion for helping out clients. And, you've got so much knowledge in the real estate industry, having worked in it for several years and in a variety of roles. So I think anyone that takes on your services is doing themselves a massive favor and will be in a far better position for having done so. So if we've got anyone that's out there that's looking to engage your services, Nicole, what's the best way that anyone can reach out?
they can certainly just give me a call. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and we're at Bayside Real Estate Advocates. So you're welcome to jump onto the website, but you're more than welcome to give me a call anytime.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks again for your time today, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.